Plato's philosophy is a continuation and transformation of earlier Greek traditions, especially those of the pre-Socratics, the sophists, Pythagorean geometry, and Socratic moral inquiry. Plato builds this inheritance into a new philosophical framework centered on dialectic and the theory of forms, according to which visible things are only imperfect copies of intelligible, eternal archetypes. Knowledge, for Plato, is not simply perception, because the sensible world is changeable and unreliable, while true understanding belongs to the soul and concerns stable realities beyond the senses. The highest of these realities is the form of the good, which gives meaning and intelligibility to all other forms and becomes the foundation of ethics, politics, and education. Plato's conception of the soul is essential to his system, because the soul is immortal, capable of motion and thought, and divided into rational, spirited, and appetitive parts. Human life is therefore understood as the union of soul and body. But philosophy aims to free the soul from the confusion of bodily desires and guide it toward truth. Plato's idea of love is also connected to this ascent, since love becomes a force that leads the soul from physical attraction toward the contemplation of beauty itself. Myths play an important role in this philosophical process, not as simple fictions, but as symbolic and pedagogical narratives that express truths difficult to grasp through argument alone. I have to emphasize Plato's theory of knowledge through the doctrine of anamnesis, according to which learning is a form of recollection of truths already known by the soul before birth. This view supports the distinction between opinion and knowledge, between the world of appearances and the intelligible world of forms. Plato's divided line illustrates the stages of cognition, moving from imagination and belief to mathematical reasoning and finally to intellectual insight into forms. The famous allegory of the cave develops the same idea by showing ordinary human beings trapped among shadows until philosophical education turns the soul toward the light of truth. In ontology, Plato's thought is described as dualistic because it separates sensible realities from intelligible forms, while also explaining that sensible things participate in or imitate their ideal models. His epistemology follows from this structure, since true knowledge must concern what is eternal and unchanging rather than what appears to the senses. In ethics, Plato identifies the good as the supreme principle and understands virtue as harmony among the parts of the soul. Justice, both in the individual and in the city, appears when each part performs its proper function under the guidance of reason. The political sections of the article show that Plato extends this model of harmony to society, where rulers, guardians, and workers correspond to reason, spirit, and appetite in the soul. The ideal state is therefore governed by philosopher kings, who alone have the wisdom needed to understand the good and organize civic life accordingly. Plato also analyzes political decline, describing a movement from aristocracy to timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and finally tyranny. His political theory has been influential but controversial, later criticized by thinkers such as Karl Popper as authoritarian or proto-totalitarian. Plato has an ambivalent attitude toward art, which he often treats as imitation of imitation, distant from truth and potentially harmful to moral education. Because of art's emotional power, Plato argues that the state should regulate artistic forms in order to preserve order, measure, and harmony. There are also Plato's unwritten doctrines, especially the claim that behind the dialogues stood oral teachings about the one and the indefinite dyad as first principles of reality. Overall, Plato's philosophy appears as a vast system linking metaphysics, knowledge, soul, ethics, politics, art, and education around the central task of turning human beings from appearance toward truth and the good.